Hello, this is Postgres FM. I don't remember number of episodes. This is Nikolay Samokhvalov from Postgres AI and my co-host as usual, Michael Christofides, PG Master. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Nikolay. I think this is 103.
Okay, not bad. So we discuss what?
Yeah. So it's one of those things that's come up in discussion a few times, and we said we should do an episode on that one day. And so we finally got to it, and it's soft deletes, which is a pattern that a lot of us have come across whilst working with databases more generally. It's not specific to Postgres, but it's the idea of instead of deleting data, not deleting it, but hiding it from the application in some way.
Let me explain it for regular, how it feels since I've built 3 social networks in the past. I used soft deletes a lot, of course. And then, Postgres is not good with deletes due to how MVCC is organized, vacuum and so on. Deletes are not good, right? It's old idea. Although each update consists of delete and insert in physical level, right? Unless it's a hot update. So how it feels in the eyes of millions of users, I know, and it's not only about the projects I've built, almost any social media uses it. You go and try to unregister your account, you press all the buttons, say delete me or something, everything. Or just, I don't know, sometimes you need to write to support or something, but usually it's good services have this button ready for you, right? So I want to delete my account fully. And then you find out that, for example, depending on implementation, then you find out that your page is, I don't know, some small artifacts you can see and feel that your page was not fully deleted or your account was not fully deleted. One of these artifacts, not artifacts, signs that soft delete is used is you can actually restore it, right? Easy, right? You can, for example, Facebook, try to delete yourself on Facebook. It will give you many chances to restore. And even after you delete it, you still can restore it, right? So you can, 1 month later, you can just press a button and restore. What users want, when they are angry about some service, they don't want to deal with it completely. They something can happen in lives, right? They can see having an account is a problem, for example. They think it's a mistake to post such pictures or to do some conversations. That doesn't matter. I want to delete it. I'm a new person right now. It's there. It's there, right? So delete. But then service says you can restore. Did you delete my data or no? And then compliance. We have also interesting points. In some cases, we have mandatory demand to store data sometimes, right?
We have both sides, right? We have laws that demand we have to store data for a certain amount of time in some environments.
And vice versa. Sometimes if user decides, the service must delete data. So delete, the word delete has many meanings, right? It's not delete SQL statement delete. When you delete your account, it does mean the service executed actual delete. Most likely they just executed updates or delete with triggers and so on. We will dive into details. But for users, it's really annoying to feel lack of ability to truly delete. I must say, I saw it and I was on the other side of, I was on both sides many times actually.
Yeah.
And I know how it feels when you want to delete for sure, 100%, I won't delete my data. It's my data, delete it. No, you can restore. It means it was not actually deleted.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we can come back to
technical
the
side.
user side. Well, I think there's so many parts of this that are interesting. One is kind of, if you do decide you want this as a provider, implementation details are quite interesting, and there are different and Postgres specific details are quite interesting as well. But from the usability side of it, there are different implementations. I think various companies and organizations are implementing features around deletion, around kind of making sure people know exactly what they're doing before hitting delete. write the words of your account name in. Everyone's come across these kind of make sure you type out, yes, I'm sure I really want to delete my account and I will not beg support to undelete it later.
They give you 1 month to reconsider, right, or something.
Exactly. Or we can recover it, but only in the next 30 days type. Yeah, exactly.
I remember another sign that you can see that soft delete was applied is instead of having 404 error, 404 error, you go to your X page like you deleted it, but you see something like account deleted. It means that record still exists in database, right? Just changed its status. So status like active, deleted, right? Pending, it means you need to activate it, like email activation or something, phone activation. Then it's active and then it's deleted, life cycle, right?
In my mind, that's kind of like a bug, though, right? Like that's just a poorly implemented soft deletion.
Yeah, but it's so common. And I actually implemented soft deletes in many various ways. But honestly, this morning, thinking like walking my dog, by the way, hello to everyone who is running, walking dog, like, I don't know, like riding bicycle. Yeah. I know we promised to keep 30 minutes, but it's good for you to run longer and ride bicycle longer, and for your dog as well. So walking my dogs, I was thinking soft deletes. And I also chatted with our bot to brainstorm what to discuss. And I realized that if I needed to implement it right now, looking like back to my 20 years of experience, 3 social networks and many other systems and our customers, all those ways to implement soft delete, what would I choose now? I don't know. Maybe by the end of this discussion, I will have some clarity. But it's so difficult. Like, it's not easy topic, actually. I expected simple topic today. But
well,
yeah.
I think it's simple if you only consider a single case at a time. If you want to give generic advice, I think it becomes more complicated. And we also dove into like the most complicated version, which is deleting a whole account, which has multiple things.
Yeah,
like
let's talk about only
it.
one table. Yeah, propagation is different topic. Consider only one table. We have many choices. For example, one I already discussed, like status. So you have pending, active, deleted, something, archived. Or it can be a different column is deleted. By default, it's false. You can set it to true. Both have very similar approaches. Both I don't like at all.
I quite like deleted at, which is with it being null by default, and then a timestamp as to when it was deleted.
Right. I would not choose these approaches. Neither of them. Today. I chose them in the past. But today, no, thank you. Why? Because then you need to deal with, like, optimizing your queries, thinking about indexes. Most of the time, queries work with active data. So you need to keep all your indexes probably partial with the where clause, having this filter to deal only with active records. And you accumulate like non-active data set in the same table, which is not useful at all, right? So, and also foreign keys.
Yeah, unique constraints. There's so many downsides.
That's complexity.
And you need to adapt your application to always view things where deleted at is not.
Right.
Because otherwise people will see deleted data. So there is definitely complexity to that. But implementation wise, I think it's on the simpler side. I think there are some advantages.
I maybe would choose it only if I know that deletes will be much less than 1% of all data. But who knows in advance, right? Maybe we will need to delete a lot. Like sometimes from social media experience, spammers, like in waves they come. They can register a million accounts and you need to delete them. At the same time, to follow your procedures you developed, if you developed soft deletes approach, you deleting fake accounts is also deletes, right? So you need to still keep them in the same table, and it's like a lot of records which will sit on the disk and most importantly in memory, in caches.
let's talk about the use cases for it, because I think they're different enough that I think it will then become clearer when we would use different ones. Like, for example, I think the primary use case, the only use case I've ever used soft deletes for in the past, I've always been at companies and working on products where we haven't done soft deletes by default. I've only ever had it implemented it once for an application, because several times a year we were restoring data that had been deleted accidentally or prematurely. So it was
Right, and you didn't have database lab to go back in time easily.
we could the solution this was actually on the Microsoft SQL Server database at the time, and we would actually restore from a backup. That's what we'd end up doing.
It takes many hours.
The larger the database, the longer it takes, and it's painful and manual. And we were doing this often enough that we decided to implement soft deletes, but with a slight different. I think sometimes people describe soft deletes as if it's like permanently going to be in that soft deletion state. We would do it and then have a cron job that anything older than, so people would delete something by mistake and very quickly email support and say, I've deleted the wrong project in this case.
We need to restore, yeah. And restore procedure is complex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it was always quickly. It was always within a day
with
or
soft
two.
Deletes, it's quicker.
No, sorry. So in this case, with this application, people that deleted things accidentally, they knew almost straight away that they had done it and that they'd regretted doing it. So we knew we could, for example, have this data in a soft deleted fashion with deleted app with a timestamp, and then we could have a cron job, hard delete, or actually delete data that was that was deleted at more than 30 days ago. So in that case, it meant we could keep the structure simple, only add one column, update the application only in a few places to view data that wasn't deleted yet. So it was a relatively simple case where we were having to restore data from time to time.
It's a good point. So I took extreme case when we discuss accounts, and it's sensitive to personal feelings are affected. But you're describing basically the same thing as emails in Gmail and recycle bin, or how it's called, trash folder.
Yeah, like on a desktop. Yeah.
Right. So you put it there basically when you do deletes, and it sits there 30 days, right? Or so, and then automatically hard deleted. Actually,
exactly.
Deleted. And you can restore it any time, and users usually appreciate this feature and considering it as good if you can undo your action. I agree. Like when we talk about some objects inside account, right? So some data.
The only difference is in this case is we didn't implement the ability to view what's in the in those two cases, but we could have done, and that's actually potentially would have been nice for users.
Yeah, actually, in this case, this approach. Now I'm thinking, in this case, I would probably choose some status approach, because it's actually the same data. We just don't show it in one place, but we show it in another place. So it's just some category. That's it, right? You're right. So in this case, I would prefer actually status, maybe timestamp of changes, but maybe I would put timestamps to special different audit log style append only table to track actions when some action was done. Yeah, but you're right. Actually, maybe this case, let's call it in place soft delete when we keep data in the same table and so on.
I was thinking use case wise, that's if you're implementing it to avoid or to make restoration easier or undelete easier,
and viewing deleted data. If in some cases like trash data, if we want to allow users to review it, why not?
Yeah, well, that's the other, there's another use case for soft deletes that I've heard and seen people write about, which is to give you the ability to examine it or to audit it or to look through why it was done or who did what. So I think there are some, exactly. And I know we've done a whole episode on audit, but it could be not necessarily for regulatory purposes, but it could be for debugging purposes.
And there we can have a hard delete button for users as well, if like only there, not in main place, but for like if object already soft deleted, we could allow users to actually delete. But let's talk about Postgres back. This is UX discussion, right? What else? Like compliance, right? Sometimes you do need to delete data for sure, like keeping it only in some backups, and also have some policy to delete there as well. I mean, backups should be deleted as well at some point. Sometimes you do need to keep information, and soft deletes help to comply some policies and regulations. Depending on law you need to follow, like it's hard. But honestly, I prefer, speaking of law, I prefer when I need to delete everything. But for convenience and as a business owner, it's actually much more convenient if you still have data all the time and you can review what happened and restore it. Well, sometimes, depending on the nature of your business, I see more and more guys follow, like, it's like some compliance rules, but I see more and more companies implement the rule that Slack deletes messages after some time and like everything is deleted. I don't know, like maybe it's because of costs, maybe it's some compliance, actually, I don't know.
Well, I think there was an age where, this going back to kind of philosophical side of things, but I think there was a time where I remember reading headlines like data is the new oil and things like that. And people thought hoarding as much data or gathering as much data as they could would be valuable in the future for analysis reasons or for mining, that kind of thing. And I feel like with a lot of data breaches, especially, sorry, I think I've got a siren in my background. With data breaches, I feel like things flipped and people started to think of having data as a liability, and the more data they held or the more personal it was, the more at risk they are of, or the bigger target they become for attacks. I feel like that's changed even within even within my career, of how people view holding data if you don't really need it.
Yeah. Also performance reasons. If you keep everything, it's hard. I see many successful e-commerce companies, they do need to actually delete data, and having soft deletes, they at some point decide to clean up and actually delete data. So in place soft delete, you just have a column or a couple of columns, and then you have a lot of partial indexes, obviously, maybe, right? Maybe no, not. It depends on the distribution and like selectivity you have. And how could we improve this? What about having a special partition or a set of partitions and include this column to partition key? It would be transparent for application if we update status setting it from active to deleted. In this case, the row will be deleted in the main partition, like actual working partition, and it will go to this like kind of archive partition, right?
Yeah, it would be like moved. So I guess it's similar in terms of like write ahead log impact, but actually, could it be higher? I guess you're forcing no hot updates, but I'm guessing you're not going to get hot update anyway because it's the deleted app.
Insert, basically. Delete plus insert. You cannot have hot update here, so zero chances, impossible. Because it's actual deleted, actual insert, and I guess hot updates is a good thing to have, but in this case you should avoid partial back to single table in just a column. If you want hot updates to be used when you update this column, you cannot use this column in partial indexes in the where clause of those indexes, right? You must avoid it, and so it works well only if you have, as I said, only low part of your table of like deletes are rare.
Yeah. But. So another solution I've seen mentioned that I've not used is using a view. So defining a view where deleted that is has no value, for example.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, like when you're in love with something many years, and then this love is converted to hate. This is my relationship with views, because Yeah, my thesis, bachelor or master, I don't remember, was about updatable views, and then updatable XML views, and like how I spent so much time and I worked with them so much time. Now the only views I can deal with now these days myself in projects where I have full control, only Postgres views.
Oh,
That's it.
nice. Okay.
Everywhere else I avoid them because I don't want to deal with dependency hell later,
Yeah.
because it's just a lot of overhead. You just change something or add column or drop column, you need to recreate your views and logs, and like logs when you issue DDL. Like, I don't want this. But yes, views can be used in many cases, but you cannot create an index on regular view. Right? Again, I'm speaking of performance. Just views will hide it, right? And that's it. I mean, hide some rows.
Exactly. But it also makes the implementation a little bit easier because you don't have to update. You don't have to make the application aware of your soft delete implementation.
Well, yeah.
You could just point the application at the view now.
Application doesn't see those rows at all, right?
Should we move on to some other
approach, separate table approach?
Yes.
So straightforward approach. Let's just have the table with same structure, right? Maybe not the same set of indexes because we don't need all of them, maybe, right? And just insert to that table, maybe using some trigger when delete happens.
Yeah, so the two approaches I've heard are a shadow table for each table you want to. Yeah, I don't know if that's
I had this
correct term,
and I also hated this.
Yeah,
because DDL maintaining schema.
But I did see a neat alternative to this in a blog post by Brando, who's got a couple of blog posts about.
So let's discuss why it's bad, like in detail, just to clarify.
Good idea.
First of all, you need to create, like, if you have many tables where you want soft delete to be implemented, you always need additional table. It's just overhead. And also you need, every time you create a column, for example, or you name column or something, you also need not to forget to do it in the shadow table.
Yeah.
And living with such schema many years in one project, I must admit, it's a huge headache. People always forget it. Like, you can try to invent some procedures and automation not to forget it, but still, like, deployments to production when shadow table DDL was forgotten, quite significant risk. So it's a lot of objects to deal with. Of course, you can put it to some, like, say, schema named shadow, for example, and keep the table names exactly the same as in the original schema, public or something new, if it's new project, right? So public schema is not popular anymore, right? So, and it's good because it means convenience, because exactly the same table names. But it introduces a lot of overhead. It requires good culture of or automation or like tooling, not to be always in consistent state, right?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of difficulties as part of this. Obviously, it does come with some benefits, like easier to restore than the next the alternative way of doing this.
Let me guess about alternative way. I also implemented it. I didn't read this post by Brandor, but I can guess because I also implement. I think we walked on the same paths, right?
Sounds like it.
You create a single table with probably like some ID, maybe some surrogate ID, then table name, who deleted, timestamp, and then just JSON or JSONB column where you just put all the data from any table, right? And you can just, okay, why not? Preserving column names, maybe even. Right, so you using...
yes, I think they used like a to JSONB function.
Right, and you do everything in triggers, so everything again is transparent. When delete statement happens, your row from any table which has this trigger is packed and sent to this table. Very convenient.
Yeah.
I like this schema.
It's super. So again, this is optimized for this is harder to restore from, right? Because it's now in a difficult format, and especially if like the schema's changed in between.
Well, this is a price. You
Yeah.
like you have trade-off. Either you
Yeah.
survive any schema changes easily, or you need to deal with but you need to deal with some mutations during restore. You need to understand, okay, this delete happened a year ago. We had different schema. What to do? You do need to do this, or you deal with schema. You need to maintain mirror schema changes all the time. I would prefer actually deal with since restore, depending on the project, of course. If restore is not super common, I would prefer this schema. Super convenient, super universal.
Yeah, me too. I think there's a lot of benefits here. Not for the one case I did implement soft deletes in the past, where the whole point was to make restoration easier in a very small number of cases. This case is very different to that. But yeah, I do think there are some tricky parts of this though. I think, for example, the compliance thing is tricky here. Like it's another place that you need to remember to delete data from in the future. If you get a GDPR request, you can't just search your normal tables for that data. You also have to search this delete log, and it might be tricky to search because it's JSON-B data with like unstructured. So I think there are downsides.
Right. Is it fair to call this soft delete? Maybe it should be called just archiving.
Good point. I mean, there isn't there's no definition of soft delete that I know. Like it's not part of the SQL standard.
Right.
So I think it's more around like what's it for? And maybe we've lost sight of like why are we implementing this feature? If it's for easy undeletes, maybe this isn't the right solution. But if it's for debugging or if it's for different purposes, then yeah, archiving makes some sense. But I guess it's deleting it in a way that it's not deleted. That is you mentioned as a user seeing some signs that it wasn't deleted. This avoids a lot of those, right? Like it's not in the same table anymore.
Yeah, application can, if we define the trigger function with security definer, we can revoke or just do not grant any permissions to application user to deal with schema or this table, and that's it. So application won't be able to reach the data at all at very low, at database level. Database guarantees it. It's not possible. At the same time, trigger can still insert it because trigger function has security definer, meaning that it has permissions to run queries which are inside the function using the level of access of the user who defined this function.
Cool. I didn't know you could do that. That's very cool.
Yes, it's called security definer. You just, when you create a function, trigger function, for trigger, you need to create a function. You just say security definer. And I like it because you can encapsulate some actions which normal user, application user. When I say application user, I mean database user which is used by your application, right? And usually there are some tables that this user cannot access. For example, this, like a shadow table or shadow schema with multiple tables. But I still prefer single table. But you can still allow, for example, specific insert encapsulated in this function and just grant permissions for specific action indirectly via the security definer.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, I use it all the time for many cases. So yeah, better control what can be done, what cannot be done. So it's good for security reasons. It's good to forbid everything first thing, and then just allow some specific action in very controlled manner in trigger.
I feel like there's a phrase for this, isn't it? Like security by minimum permission or something. I can't remember what the phrase is. It's like a security principle of least permission. Give things the least permission they need to do what they need to do.
Right. Well, it's in former life we called it blacklisting, whitelisting. I don't know why now it's not possible to tell this, right? But it means that you will just say nothing is possible except this, right? And It's good. It's good. So yeah, it's a good approach, but you are right. Restoration will be tricky. You need to develop specific procedures, deal somehow with schema evolution, and in this case, if like I would say if we talk about some like account deletion, I would do this. If we talk about something like we have some objects user can create, modify, or delete, and we want support undo for deletion. Like in Gmail with emails, when you just delete email, it goes to trash, and then you can undo or delete forever, right? There's a button delete forever. This is hard delete. In this case, I would prefer maybe still in place, like in the same, like just a column in the same table, status or something.
Nice.
Right. Both are, we can say, both are soft deletes with their own pros and cons.
Yeah.
Right.
Seems very reasonable.
Do you think they can coexist in the same project? Not because were like decisions were made by different persons, different developers.
I genuinely think at the end of Brando's blog post, he mentioned switching to this in all but a couple of tables. So I think they are currently a good example of a project that has both.
Switching to JSONB shadow table?
Yes, instead of you calling it in place. I think they still implement in place in a couple of places.
The best thing about this single shadow table with JSONB column is that it's so easy to attach it to any table. It's just a trigger. That's it. It will slow down deletes a little bit. That's it.
Yeah, because of the triggers. You could use it for the hard delete and then have it around for a while longer.
We discussed about compliance and so on, and I mentioned that for business owners, like there are fears that like something was deleted, hard to recover. It's very good for audit purposes. For example, you have some account in your application and there are some admins or like owners, managers, and there are some regular users. Some users do something, they deleted something, and you just need to not only see and undo it, but see when it was done, by whom. Like
I saw another person in a Hacker News thread not just audit, but also what really happened. So I saw somebody who had implemented a chat system. Let's say it's a business-to-business support system, and one of your internal works for your company users said something they regret saying as part of this chat and then deleted one of those messages. It's really useful for an admin to see the whole history. Or, you mentioned social media. A lot of social media sites let you edit a message, keeping the old version.
Update, not delete. So this leads us to like time travel, basically. We cannot name it soft updates, right? But tracking old versions, it's actually also possible via the same approach. And I think I did it as well. So when you have delete with this trigger, with security definer function, trigger function, which just archives previous record, in the trigger function you use old key name. This is just record, right?
Yeah.
And you convert it to JSONB and insert, right? Absolutely the same trigger can be used for updates. With any update, maybe I would have some checks if some actual data was changed, not just something small was changed, right? But actual data like message was changed, right? The title message, new dot title doesn't equal old dot title, and so on. If something, just to avoid, like spam archiving, which useless records in this shadow table. So if I see something valuable has been changed with this update, again, I pack old to a JSONB and insert the same trigger, basically, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure in
Almost
that case. It depends how and when how often you need to be viewing those older ones, because it might be tricky to show the admin those. How are you going to select that data back out to show them the old versions? Like, it's a tricky query.
I would, by the way, for updates, I think this is what I did actually. For updates, I would archive probably both old and new records, because to be able to show diff. Yeah. Yes, it's nice. Like too much data to store, but why not? In this case, I would extend shadow table with additional JSONB column, like delete the records related to deletes won't have it. Like if they would have only nulls in that column, for updates I would have 2 JSONB values,
Interesting.
old and new basically, and then we can build some diff if needed, right?
Maybe. I think this is getting beyond the scope of what, but this is interesting.
No,
I
it's
think
useful and easy to
Yeah.
implement and super universal. You can again attach it to any table and have simple audit like that.
But what I don't like or understand is, because this is a single shadow table across multiple, what are you querying? Like, how are you looking for that in a, let's say it was a month ago, how are you efficiently finding that in that shadow table? What are you searching by?
Well, depending on the application, right? I would probably, in this shadow table, I would probably have some columns which would allow me to search faster, or I would deal with searching inside JSONB. Why not? Genetics,
Well, yeah,
this
maybe,
slows
but
down updates.
yeah, there's a lot of, I think that it's a
Inserts, I mean,
tricky one,
inserts.
because if it's a shadow table for all tables, you'd like having user ID or like having other columns that you could search by might not make sense for some of those.
You can have null there. Right?
True.
Well, yeah, I agree that, especially if you add gin, insert this implicit insert which happens during delete or update, it will be not fast at all already because of gin.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, overhead. This is the price to have it.
Yeah, I like that. It's another trade-off. Like, it depends what you want, and it depends how much data you have, and depends what proportion are ever going to be deleted, or what proportion are ever going to be restored or looked into. But yeah, that, I think it's really cool. I'll link up the blog post we mentioned. Any last things you wanted to add?
Actually, you know what? During this discussion, I was curious what we have in Postgres AI system, and actually we have exactly this approach I just described. We have a shadow table, single one for many tables to track deletes and updates. It's called audit log, and we have data before and data after, 2 JSONB columns.
Interesting.
Yeah, and actually a lot of additional stuff. This is just to be able to show admins of organizations what happened.
In PG Mustard, we have hard deletes. It's slightly different because it's just query plans, right? And you can always submit them again. But if you delete them, they're gone. So we decided not to at all.
Yeah, and now an application cannot reach this part of database at all. It's only possible like implicitly, as I described,
makes sense.
via security definer. So quite a good approach, very reliable.
Yeah.
So,
Nice.
Good.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Nikolay. Catch you next week.
Thank you. Good chat. Bye-bye.